Hello, everyone. Good evening. Sorry we're a little late getting new things set up, but welcome to Popcast on the Rocks for May, 16th now.
You
Going by
got it.
quick. Episode 18. How is your evening, Andrea?
It's good. I've had a good day so far. Um, I went running a little earlier today, and it's been like a beautiful weather, even though it's kind of rainy. It's good for running. And then as I was running, like I just kind of ran past this whole row of houses where like all the trees were like in bloom, and I kind of could smell the flowers. And then I ran past another house and smelled like one of my other favorite smells, which is campfire. So
Mm,
I don't know. It's feeling like spring finally, kind of nice
nice.
out. Yeah. So
Yeah, I can see
I'm
it being a good day for running.
yeah, it's nice. And it's I mean, the weather's shifted so violently in Minnesota. I feel like every time I go out running, I'm like, okay, am I putting on like my tank top and shorts, or am I putting on, like my thermal leggings and my, cowl neck, you
Hmm.
know, heat trapper or sweater or what? So, yeah,
Yeah, I
today
don't
was
have
a
that
good
problem. I don't have that problem. I just sit on my ass all day, so
day.
it's not an issue for me.
You don't have to
Uh,
like do extreme varying styles in the tractor when you go out
I
in the
do
field.
actually. I do kind of a little
See?
bit
So
because
you understand.
yeah, I mean, you get up early or whatever and it's cold, so you're kind of bundled up. But it's very easy for this giant glass box you're sitting in to
Mhm.
become hot. So I have
For
the AC on, but then I take off my extra layers and then I get outside and I don't know, it's changing temperatures all the time.
the whole
So,
production.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, see, I don't get that when I run, so, like, I have to, like, hope I guessed right because I don't get to just, like, shed layers or put them
Yeah,
back on if I guessed wrong.
yep.
So
Well, you carry a backpack. That's an
yeah.
extra. Put a couple weights in there. You got up the challenge.
Right, that's my next
Yeah.
level challenge.
Mhm.
So,
Well,
yeah, good day for me. How about you?
yeah, it's been good. Yeah, I mean, the rain, I guess it's, gloomy-ish, but, it's fine, I suppose. Like I said yesterday, actually, if no one caught it, I believe it's on Facebook now, but our,
And on Twitter as well.
Real Housewives on Twitter too now, nice. Our Real Housewives breakdown we did last night. So I talked a little bit, how it actually felt like Friday to me because we got done with the bulk of our work.
Right,
So yeah, it's been good in that regard.
right. Nice to wrap
Um,
that up.
yes. Um, so you found more drink events. There's always
Yeah.
drink events.
Yes, I mean, you gotta have a celebration for everything. Can't
Are
leave
you
anything out.
are you abiding by them? One of the
Um, I mean, I'm close.
You're
I'm not
close.
abiding by the one today. So
Okay.
today is mimosa day.
Mhm.
Although Chris and I did do mimosas earlier in the week. We did like a Brinner night, like a breakfast for dinner, and we had like waffles and
Wait,
sausages
what
and
is that
mimosas.
terminology now? Is that another like millennial thing that I'm not a part
Brinner?
of? Yeah.
No, this has been around for a while.
Oh, my brother-in-law Luke is in the chat. Have you heard of Brenner? Come on
Come
now.
on, Luke. You know you have.
I don't think anyone's heard of
Yes,
that.
Alan knows. Alan
Alan.
knows. Thank you,
All right.
Alan.
I'm out of it. Whatever.
So, yeah, so it's Brinner, breakfast for dinner. And yeah, we had mimosas earlier this week. Just, kind of like feeling like, why not do something fun and different, break up our
Hmm.
routine.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but I found that tomorrow begins American Craft Beer Week. So I am celebrating a little early with a craft beer here from Toppling Goliath. It's their
Oh.
pseudo Sue. Um,
Oh.
one of my coworkers, here's the can with its like crazy T-Rex.
You're gonna make Alan jealous right now. I mean, I feel yeah, see, he says good stuff. I feel like every
Yep.
time I see Alan, he's like, "Have you had this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I've had that." He's just in love with it, I
I
think.
yeah, I've had several people recommend it to me, so I was like, finally, like, let's do it. Like it's
Yep.
American Craft Beer Week. Let's celebrate. So
I thought it looked like lemonade. That's what I saw at
yeah, I
first.
mean, it kind of does. It's a pale ale, but it kind of looks like a hazy pale ale
Mhm.
almost. So
I don't know
it's
if
good.
I've
I
poured
like
that
it.
one out of the can before, so I'm really have to look
Mhm.
at it. But
Yeah. What
Yep,
have you
that's what's
got,
up.
John?
Well, so I got this first. I'm gonna start with the glass. I got this glass at what's the theater out by you guys? The good one. Um,
Alamo?
yeah, yep. So I got this at the Alamo Draft House.
John, remember the Alamo.
Yeah, I do remember the Alamo. Yes.
I'm sorry, that was a
Yeah.
terrible history joke.
um, but it's our friend Tara had made the joke. You need to make a Jason mimosa in this glass. I mean, you can see
Ooh,
that. But
nice.
I did not make a Jason mimosa, but it reminded me of that because of Mimosa Day. So this is like, I don't know, super summery drink. We have these like things of frozen fruit. It's just blended up with a bunch of shots of tequila, and
Oh, okay.
it's good. So I'm not abiding by the days, unfortunately.
Dang it, John. So
I know.
close. I mean, it would've been so perfect in the Jason Momoa glass, Jason Mimosa.
Yep. No
Man.
champagne here right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah,
and
that's
we're
something
yeah.
I don't exactly keep on hand, although I've heard, like, that's one of the things you're supposed to do as, like, an adult is have, like, a fully stocked bar and have, like, champagne at the ready.
Mm.
I don't know, I guess I'm not fully an adult yet.
We have pretty full. I mean, usually name your spirit of choice, and we
Mhm.
have often many options of each.
Right.
But um, some of the mixers and garnishes and different things like
Mhm.
that seem like a difficult thing to keep on hand all the time. It takes up a lot of
Right.
space. So
Right.
when they don't last forever, you know,
Right.
can't have too much alcohol. It just lasts and lasts. But yeah. Well, I should say too, like should have said this earlier, I guess. So we're gonna have some special guests later in the episode.
Mhm.
Got a few news stories to get through first. But if you're interested in Westworld yet and you have not had enough Westworld talk, we're gonna have a couple other people in here that are passionate about it, and we'll get their take. I'm sure you've heard us yammer on about it. You know what we think. If you don't, you should go back and see that. What's wrong with you? But yeah, coming up a little bit later. But for the time being, I'm going to skip over gaming news because there is
Right.
gaming news and I'm not ignoring it, but we're going to switch to doing things. Our midweek episode will be more gaming focused. So
Mhm.
we'll talk about that then. Um, but you've got a fun story. We have a birthday to congratulate or
Yes,
happy
yeah,
birthday to wish.
today's a celebratory day. I mean, first off, we found out that it is Pierce Brosnan's 67th birthday. So happy birthday to the former Mr. Bond. Um, and I saw you'd sent me that this morning, and I was wondering, as a Bond fan, where does he rank for you? Like in terms of the men who have played Bond?
It's a tough question.
It
Um,
is tough. So
yeah,
I really like him. I
I
mean,
feel
he's
yeah,
not my number one, but he's like up there. Especially
I
for his look. I feel like he just embodied the look of what I thought James Bond should look like.
sure. Ashley always thought he was too pretty for Bond, like blow dried hair, real nice, or something. And
Sure.
I guess we definitely need to have a full episode on Bond stuff. I mean, I was expecting to have had it by now with the when Bond was going to be coming out, but
Right.
due to the delay. I've come to the point where I really enjoy each Bond for something, in a different way. Um, Brosnan is really important to me, his films, just because it's kind of the ones that were coming out in theaters when we were growing up. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
He was my first introduction, to Bond, and then my father thought that that was terrible, that, like, this was my first introduction, so he made me go back and, like, start with Doctor No and, like, start the Bond
yep,
series. Um, so, I mean, I feel like there's some nostalgia there for me, and maybe it makes me rank him, like, higher up in my hierarchy of Bonds, but
yep.
I would say that Pierce Brosnan for me is probably 3rd. Um,
Okay.
I I'm definitely a fan of Sean Connery. I don't think you can, like, beat the original, and
Okay.
he's just so, like, smooth. I think he just, like, makes it work. And then I would say Daniel Craig is second for me. Um, not I had a hard time with him to begin with. Like I said, I had this, like, idea that Bond is, like, darker somehow, you know what I mean? Like, Daniel Craig was just so blonde and blue-eyed that I was just like,
Hmm.
"Oh," like, this just wasn't, like, my vision of James Bond.
Sure.
But I love his movies, and I love his acting style as
Hmm.
James Bond, so he's sort of, like, moved up the ranks for me, but
Well,
Pierce Brosnan
frankly,
is our solid 3.
in Craig's first film, really they kind of I feel like that was a story that he's blonde and blue-eyed, and so they weren't gonna, like, shy away from that, and they sort of
Right,
played it up. They
right,
made sure he was blonde, and they, like, really the shots where you would see the eyes extra blue, and I think as you go on and that's not such a novelty anymore, that's
right,
not really called into focus, it's not
right,
shot that way to call out those things, so
right. Yeah, I had a hard time with it at the beginning, even though I love Casino Royale, and that's probably, oh, maybe not quite my favorite because I think Skyfall is my favorite Daniel Craig, but
mhm,
I really came to rank that highly, Casino Royale highly in
yep.
my list of overall movies.
Well, there's a kind of short list of pretty influential movies to my childhood, and Goldeneye is up there for sure.
Yes,
So,
that's
so
absolutely my favorite Pierce Brosnan one.
it's
I think
often the fresh starts that are the good ones.
Well, and I
You know.
think what's weird about Pierce Brosnan for me is that the movies that he did as James Bond, like the order in which they were released directly correlate to my ranking of them.
Okay.
Like, I think unfortunately, like, he started high with
Yeah.
GoldenEye and then just, like, kept going down.
Mhm. Well, it's
You know what
kind
I
of like
mean?
that thing that we talked about on a previous episode. Your it has Austin Powers wrecked Bond kind of thing, and it was kind of you know talking about how things tend to get sillier as they move. They
Yes.
want to add levity to things, and yeah. So.
Yeah, I just think they went a little too far, and unfortunately, Die Another Day is probably just one of the hardest to kind of, like, wrap your brain around with, like, the believability of what they ask you to believe someone could do,
Mhm.
and looking directly at that whole parachute wave surfing thing that they made him do.
Oh, come on now. That was
Uh
yeah,
I
it was
mean,
stupid.
I can stretch some believability. I mean, my it's one of my favorite franchises is the Fast and the Furious, for goodness sake. And I mean, like, the things that they're supposed to be able to do in a car are absolutely ridiculous. But I mean, you realize as you're looking at it that it's ridiculous. So
Okay, so what was your name for brunch and breakfast and dinner?
Brenner.
So Brinner, JMO, and Fast and the Furious. Andrea, what's wrong with you? Come on,
I
these
know.
things. All
I
right.
know.
Well, happy
I
birthday,
I
Mr.
I like
Brosnan.
so many things. My
Yep,
tastes run the gamut. So
they do. Hmm.
yes. So to echo you, happy birthday to Mr. Brosnan, and then we're celebrating something else as well this
Yeah.
weekend.
I found about all this because CD Project Red tweeted about it actually.
Mhm.
But Mad Max Fury Road came out 5 years ago as of yesterday, which is nuts. I feel like that was 2 years ago or something. I don't
I
know.
know.
Just shows how old I'm getting,
Are
old
you
and
excited
creaky.
for the prequel that's coming out based around Imperator Furiosa?
I mean, I haven't heard about it in a long time. So if it's still on the books, if it's happening, you know,
Yeah.
then yes. I mean, um I very much enjoyed the take they had on Fury Road. So if I can have more of that kind of vibe, that kind of soundtrack, that sort of over saturated insanity, yeah, I'm good for more.
Yeah, I found an article that centers around an interview that George Miller did with the New York Times, and he finally confirmed that it's happening. He settled his dispute with Warner Brothers
Oh,
over the
okay.
rights to the prequel, and now he's moving forward with it. And he confirmed that Charlize Theron is not going to be reprising her role because it's a prequel.
Well, oh,
Yeah, so he was like, "I considered doing some CGI to, like, de-age her, but I don't wanna
mm,
do it." And
hmm.
I don't know how I feel about it. I'm kinda torn. Like, I get it. CGI is still kind of like I mean, it's so much better, but it's still kinda shaky. But, I mean, how do you do that without
The problem
Charlize?
with well, I mean, I hope they find a no name that is kind of a,
Mm, mhm,
an untapped potential real powerhouse that they can throw in there and she'll go to town. I don't want
sure.
to see another familiar face that's also supposed to be Charlize. So
Mhm,
we'll see if they can come up with that person.
yep.
That's tough to do, but yep. Um Now, I guess so. I guess all right. Mad Max is very comic booky. It's
Very true,
over the top,
very
larger
true.
than life. You got some other comic book news, kind of comic book media
Yeah,
news.
yeah, Netflix is kind of expanding their catalog of, lesser known comic book series and movies. Um, and they just picked up a movie called Ball and Chain, which is going to star The Rock and Emily Blunt. And the basic premise is that they're a married couple who are about to get a divorce when one day they have like an accident that gives them superpowers. But
As
the trick
as happens.
as it happens,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, what accident is gonna be staged. I'm assuming it's not a radioactive spider bite, but I won't rule anything out.
Trip in
Um,
the shower. Yeah.
but the deal is that they get these powers, but they only work if they're in close proximity to each other and if they're, like, getting along. So if they're, like, fighting or they, like, break up, they don't get to
hmm
keep these superpowers.
I was reading that. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, which to me, when I read it, sounded like the exact opposite of the movie Hancock. Did you ever see that?
No, I remember coming out. I wasn't super interested, I guess.
Yeah, I
But
mean, it's solid, but not great.
mhm,
I mean, I love Will Smith, and I was kind of deep in like a Will Smith phase at that point. So I was like, yeah,
mm,
I'll go see it. And it's good. It's unfortunately just kind of like two movies that got smashed together. Like they couldn't figure out how to relate the two plots, and they were like, F it, like we'll just make these two different movies and somehow transition in the middle.
sure.
Um, but the premise for that is and I guess spoiler alert to anybody who hasn't seen it, although it's like how many years old now. Um, but Hancock and the character Mary, played by Charlize Theron, um, used to be husband and wife, but the longer they stay together, they're both superheroes. The weaker their powers get, so they're actually not supposed to be around each other if they
Interesting.
want to keep their
Okay. So
superpowers.
yeah, it
So
is
that's
kind of the
the
opposite.
exact opposite of like
Do you know, was that based on a comic book?
Hancock. I
Yeah.
believe so,
Okay.
but let me
Because I
check.
saw this one it's by a pretty
Right.
prolific Marvel guy. Well, I think he's done
Mhm.
DC too and stuff for sure. Yeah, he has. But I like him. I'm a fan, and so that lends some credibility to this as being something I might be interested in. Jeff
Sure.
Lobdell, I think. I don't know how to say his last name.
I think we can be generous with pronunciation.
Well, I saw it as a kid all the time. It's one of those things you see as a child or whatever, and then you just like your brain sees it one way or whatever, and you
Right,
never learn how to say it, and it's always that's the way I pronounce it.
right. Yeah, you say it in your brain, but you don't have to say it out loud.
Yep.
So Hancock is based on a graphic novel.
Okay. So yeah. Hmm. Okay.
So yeah, I
Well,
just thought it was
yeah.
kind of cool that Netflix is picking that up as well. The Rock and Emily Blunt have already
Yeah.
worked
Why did you
together.
hear about this story, and why would you care about it? Weird.
I
Explain.
know, it's out of
Hmm.
the blue for me.
Yeah.
So they've already worked together on Disney's Jungle Cruise, but of course that was supposed to come out this year and now is being delayed. So it'll be interesting to see if like Netflix is kind of like banking on a chemistry that that is there but hasn't, kind of been
Yeah.
proven yet.
Yeah. That's a
So,
good point. Netflix takes
but
anything though. That's always the deal. So, and those are big names. So,
yeah, that's right.
yep. Um, that's cool. I was kind of looking forward to Jungle Cruise. So,
Mhm.
hopefully they're good together, and hopefully they're good together in this, and
Yeah.
hopefully it comes
I
sooner
mean,
than later.
yeah, they're two good actors and funny people, and I could
Yep.
see it working. Like, I could see
Every,
them having, like, same kind of humorous play off each other.
everybody wants. I don't want to say everybody, but there's a contingent that wants Emily Blunt and what's her husband.
Uh, John, Krasinski.
Yeah, them to be Mr. and Mrs. Fantastic in
Oh,
Fantastic Four.
really?
And I think that's
Interesting.
perfect. Now, I can see them being hesitant because they're not like they're not spring chickens, so they want to have them around for a decade doing these action roles or something like that. Maybe they
Right.
want someone that's 10 years younger, but I
I
I
don't
would
know. If I was them, I'd be more worried about, like, the Fantastic Four franchise. Like, nobody seems to be able to do this well.
That's because
You know what I
Marvel's never
mean?
had it. Marvel's
I
never had
know.
they didn't have the foresight way back when to hold on to these rights. So, I mean, yeah, Sony has to make a film every so often with it or they
Mhm.
lose the rights. So they just like we have to put something together, guys. Like throw it together. Do it, and yeah, they went light and goofy to start and then they would try,
Yep.
well, maybe let's do the more heavy and serious thing.
Right.
It doesn't have the Marvel balance that the original Marvel family needs.
I was
So,
gonna say maybe this if they try for it a third time, it could be their Goldilocks. It's just right.
and they don't need their own film. Like Marvel has their cinematic universe, they can introduce these characters and they can be
Sure.
part of the world. And if people latch on to them and it's good and something develops, they can
That's
do a
true.
different movie for them.
That's true.
So,
Yeah, I think they've got a lot of latitude to play now. Now
yep,
that Marvel's obviously proven themselves many times over.
yep. Well, from comic book movies to video game movies, I saw this the
Yeah.
other day too. I had to say I didn't like think about what my answer is, but James Cameron saying his
Yep.
guilty pleasure is the original Resident Evil movie.
Mhm.
Um, do you like that
Yeah.
movie? Did you think about? Do you have an answer for this?
I mean, I thought about it. I feel like I have different types of guilty pleasure movies. But I do definitely have one that I will definitely always watch. It always comes on TV. And I'll always stop and watch it no matter where it is, in in the kind of runtime. But it's Just Go With It with
Hmm.
Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. I don't know why. I freaking love that movie.
Just I don't even know if I've heard of that.
So it's a newer one for Adam Sandler, but I mean, he plays a plastic surgeon who's dating this like 24-year-old girl, and she thinks he's like super immature. So he like talks about like this whole family he invents an entire family, and then she's like, okay, but you're still married, and he's like, no, 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 I'm gonna divorce my wife, like she's horrible and awful, and I want to be with you. And so then he has to invent like a fake wife for himself to divorce. Enter Jennifer Aniston as his assistant, becomes his like fake
Spoiler
wife.
warning. Spoiler
Yeah,
warning,
oh
every
yeah.
Andrea.
This is also an old movie.
I know,
Um,
but new to someone.
but yeah, I love it. I love Adam Sandler movies. I've loved them since I was a kid. Um, and I don't know why I like this one, but I like Jennifer Aniston's like comedic side, and I think they're actually like a funny duo. Which Netflix also apparently thinks they're a funny duo because they just did the movie Murder Mystery together as well,
Oh, right.
where they play like
Yeah.
another married couple. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of one of
Yeah.
my like guilty pleasure movies.
I don't know what, I don't feel particularly guilty about loving any movie. I mean, I have to say I have watched the original Twilight movie too many times. It's been quite a
I think that
while,
could be a guilty pleasure.
but I mean, maybe I would hate it now. It's been a while, but
Mhm.
yeah, I guess I'll go with that because other and nothing else, I'm not afraid to say like, yeah, I love that. And
Mhm.
because there's a reason. It's like zombie ass. That's a movie. That's a thing.
Wow.
But it's the enjoyment because it's so bad.
Yeah.
And there's plenty like that. Batman and Robin.
I was gonna
Great
say
to,
I was
you
gonna say
know.
if we're gonna say like if there's something so bad that you like love it, then I definitely have the perfect answer for that. It's I Know Who Killed Me with Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I remember you. Yeah, that's
It's
right.
so awful, and I love it because it's so awful. But she is
Or
the absolute worst.
you
Like
and
she's the
Ashley, it's
worst
always
actor.
Queen of the Damned.
Oh, I do love that one.
Yeah, so you got a
Yes.
lot of them. You got a lot of
I
them.
do. Yeah. I feel like I have a lot of different ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of like, oh, sort of for this genre, this is my guilty pleasure movie. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that's our like brief bit of news.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll bring in our new guests here, and maybe that can be our first question we pose to our
Ooh,
new guests as
I
well. Like
like
no
it.
time
On
to
the
think about it.
spot.
Maybe they did here while we were talking about it. But everybody, welcome to the conversation, Chris and Tay.
How's it going,
Hi
guys?
guys.
Tay, you're holding very still.
I am so still right now.
Nice.
I'm also have remarkable cell service for being on the side of a mountain in Peru.
Yeah, yeah.
We
You got the
appreciate your commitment to joining us.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean I've only actually got like 2 hours total in this place. No, I'm just kidding. That is actually how it works. You have like 2 hours to be in that little area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, and then you just kind of are herded through there.
Sure.
Try to take your photo ops,
Yep.
get your Tinder profile pictures.
Is that what we're
That's
looking at right now?
uh
No comment.
Tinder, Grinder, what's the difference?
I'd date you, Tay.
Watch
Yep.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Watch it, hubby of mine.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so yeah, we got you guys here to talk about Westworld because you guys are passionate about that. But let's give this last question we just talked about. What's your takes? What are your takes on that? What do you have a guilty pleasure film? Something you shouldn't like, but you do.
Taylor, what do you think?
Oh, Chris, that is such a dodge.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm buying myself thinking time. I was not prepared.
Good work. I like to think I have at least good taste. I probably I mean I wouldn't put this in the same vein as Twilight, but I definitely like The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise way too much.
Ooh, good one.
Oh, no, that's a good film. Good movie.
Ed Zwick is just also great. Like he's got some really good movies.
What's that?
Ed Zwick, the
Oh,
producer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah. See, I'm going for his hair. I'm going
Yeah.
for Tom's hair in that film.
You're there. You're there and then some.
Yeah.
But
No.
Edward Zwick also did Deliverance. Speaking of Daniel Craig,
Oh, right. Yeah.
so just some of the moral themes that he tackles with his films, I really like. But again, The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, the juxtaposition is kind of.
Yeah. That's a movie I haven't seen in a while. That's a good one. That's not. I mean, I guess you're saying that you like it too much, but that doesn't ring as a guilty pleasure to me at all. That's
I'm also dodging.
yeah. Yeah.
Fair
Jay's
enough.
dodging in a different way.
Yeah.
Fair
I'm
enough.
at least dodging with an answer.
Oh,
True.
gauntlet
I'll-
thrown, Chris.
I'll back you up, Taylor. I've actually used Last Samurai as a teaching tool before, so I'm with you on that. There's a lot of historical fiction in there that you have to kind of
Yeah.
navigate through. But
Yep.
I don't know, when I think about guilty pleasures, I think about movies that I really liked when I was younger, and I have like no artistic quality or are really not good anymore. I don't know. I remember the episode he had a few weeks ago when Andrew and I watched the Ninja Turtle movies, which I mean, watching them as an adult, they're awful, but they're awesome at the same time. So I think about like movies that I watched when I was a kid when I think about guilty pleasures, that kind of stuff. I mean, we're on the show that talks about this kind of stuff all the time. So the original Star Wars films, like the stories are amazing, but like when you stack them up against the production quality of what's modern and possible today, like they're pretty. There are parts that are pretty hokey just in terms of production quality, but the stories are amazing, and that's what keeps people coming back. So I just think about things like that, like watching those with my dad and that kind of stuff.
Well, bringing that up, do you think that what do you think holds up better, the prequel trilogy or the original trilogy?
I think that people who want to actually talk about uh, like movies, like as an art form, you have to kind of set aside the technology that's available in a particular era. So you have to talk about the quality of the stories, and
Mhm.
when you talk about the quality of the stories, nothing compares to the original trilogy in terms of how they stack up. So like, yeah, it's more engaging if you're in a movie theater and you get to see more modern effects. But like, I mean, you're not going to be able to replace the stories of the original. I mean, what's appealing to the third trilogy and the second trilogy are revealing aspects of the universe that we didn't understand from the originals, or new truths that get revealed, like obviously like the childhood of Vader, for example. I mean, those are just things that we wouldn't have a reason to care if we didn't have the original. So
Mhm. Well, I think it's something like I think if you look at the original Jurassic Park, I think that
sure.
holds up phenomenally well
Mhm.
because of the practical effects used. And I think they did themselves a disservice, regardless of story, just in the technical element to in the prequel trilogy of Star Wars to attempt to go all digital. They weren't
Mhm.
using film and to digital effects as much as possible, basically, because of that. Well,
Yeah.
that's good enough now, but only, by the time the third movie came out, they had dated episode one
Yep.
pretty severely, and episode two shows it pretty poorly. Like we've come a long ways since then,
Mm,
Mhm.
whereas a physical build of a Tauntaun is still a physical
right.
build of a Tauntaun. Maybe it moves a little
Yeah.
funny or something, but like it's
Mhm.
there's the practical things that are there. They fill rooms with aliens that are
Mhm.
modeled, and not
Yep.
Right.
just
Right.
digitally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
There's
you're.
something I think about seeing something with your eye that you can tell is a thing and something that's digital. Your eyes somehow can like register the difference.
Mhm.
And I think the best use of effect is when you can blend that sense of like the real with the digital.
But there's
And
Yeah.
also
that was Star Wars one's mistake, I think.
there's an aspect of restraint too, right? Like like it was pointed out to me that in the original trilogy, the lightsaber is only ever really used at like very key moments. Like you think about like
Yep.
the lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader
Mm,
in the first movie, right?
Right.
Like it, and then you flash forward to like Obi-Wan and Anakin and like that just orgy in a lava field
Yep.
of
right. It's
lightsaber.
used constantly. Yeah.
Right. And
Yep.
like you think about it, like, again, they're leaning on the CGI to like wow us with
Right.
the lightsaber and the flash, as opposed to like you think about how like Sir Alec Guinness and like the power of that moment, and just like
Mhm.
he doesn't even move the sword,
Yep.
right? Like he shuts it off, and like that I think is more powerful in the storytelling, and that kind of speaks to Chris, the longevity of like the
Mm.
movie.
Yep.
Yeah,
They
and I think as a history teacher, I think about films, especially as a, and maybe other people don't do this, but like what were they capable of doing at the time, and how do you kind of I don't know, create you can kind of parcel that out from the quality of the story, and like Tay said, like how do they use art to communicate something that technology didn't let them at the time. So Jurassic Park is definitely on my list of a film that I thought. Now, I mean, we were all pretty young when that came out, but I felt like truly wowed by what they were able to do. Not wowed in a that's flashy and look at this.
Yep.
To use Taylor's saying, the lightsaber orgy.
Mhm.
But I was truly wowed by how far they pushed I don't know how far they pushed the bell curve for what technology was going to require in the future. So
Yep. I think it's why we see a lot of times you think you have directors and writers and whatever, you figure they're perfecting their craft, which
Mm.
I think they do over time, but if they gain a certain level of success, a lot of the barriers to creativity are washed away. You don't have people that will tell you no. You have expanding, ever expanding, limitless budgets, and it's not conducive to part of what is the magic of creativity in your limitations. You know, Star Wars, the original trilogy, is not what George Lucas envisioned in many ways, but that's for its betterment.
Mhm.
Whereas he makes the prequel trilogy, this is exactly what I want. Well, he didn't run into any walls, and you know, the force creativity, I think, is one of the best driving forces you can have to great art. So. Well, that's not the topic we brought you here to talk about, but you know, we got to get in Star Wars.
That's
sure.
right.
It has to be talked about. So, other science fiction things, current science fiction things that I think haven't been like driven off the rails and pounded the ground and forced me into despair like Star Wars has. But Westworld season 3. Um, just to start, um, did you guys watch Westworld right from the get go when it first aired? And did you love it right away? What's your history or background with it? Go ahead,
Oh,
Tay.
Taylor's going to go. Go for it. Yep.
Yeah, I've been just following it season by season, and I've loved it since the get go. You know, just mind blown after mind blown experience. So that's been my kind of arc on it. So I've tracked it since the beginning, and obviously suffered through the long stretches of not having it while they
Yeah.
create entirely new worlds.
Right.
Yep. Same for you,
I can't,
Chris.
I can't remember, Andrea, when we started. I remember waiting a distinct amount of time in between 1 and 2, but I also don't think we started right with the premiere.
We
Uh,
didn't. No.
yeah, maybe we might have
Binge
started right
watched.
as they finished season 1.
We binge watched season 1 after it was complete. Yes.
Sure, sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, how do the seasons, you know, stack up to you? You know, I mean, that's the question with Star Wars. Always name your order. Do you have an order?
Mhm.
Has that been solidified in your mind for um, what's the best? Go ahead,
Oof.
Chris, or whoever.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think it's really hard to rank them. I was thinking about this question, um, compared to another show that Andrew and I watched. I know you guys have talked about. I was trying to compare it to Altered Carbon,
Mm,
just in terms of
Yep.
when you look at two different seasons of theoretically a coherent storyline across the seasons. Um, that really it was really stark about Alder Carbon how different the two seasons were and how they felt like. I mean, if you had told me that they were two totally different production teams, I would have believed you. I think for Westworld, because the narrative of each season is so different, it's really hard to kind of rank them in one way or another. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, the first season is all about like main characters and the hosts going through this process of self-discovery, and season 2 is all about the veil coming down within Westworld, and then season 3 is all about this like broader plot for humanity and how
mhm.
like these questions they've answered on an individual level, like humanity is grappling with these too. And I felt less compelled by season 3, but it's also just it's fire hydrant moment in terms of the amount of information they expect you to process in each
Yep.
episode. And I
Mhm.
felt it. I felt character development slid in season 3,
Mhm.
but like I don't know, broader philosophical questions about society kept me up at night. So
Sure.
So would you go like 1, 2, 3 then?
I mean, season 1 ended on such an epic moment. I have a hard time not just always keeping that first. And again, I think there's a
Sure.
bias. Oh, there's always going to be a bias for the first season of anything. because they introduce you, no matter you're willing to set aside their faults. But that's probably how I would order it if I was forced to choose. Yeah.
I think so. Chris is spot on. And so yes, and I think there's another natural comparison to another HBO show, True Detectives, and kind of
Mm,
how
yeah.
those seasons, again, same kind of like each season is it's like kind of different show.
Yep.
And they're not even trying to like string them on and off. They're just kind
Right.
of trying to create more of a universe, and tell like a broader message from different angles. But I think there's you kind of have that same thing, and I think if I'm gonna rank season one was just so elegant and just like such a perfect like arc from start to finish and like
Hmm.
kind of opening, and then like season two kind of delves deep, and then season three again is like pulling back and creating a larger universe, which is pretty much exactly what True Detectives does with seasons one, two, and three. And I actually like seasons one, season three, season two, kind of in that order of both
Okay.
series.
Okay.
So one,
So
3, 2 for you.
Probably, but I mean, again, like
Okay.
that's a hairy ranking. That's a hairy ranking.
That's also
mhm.
my ranking. It's a complicated, troubled ranking, but
Yes,
yes, it's the
complicated.
best approximation of what you can if
Sure.
you have to.
If you
Yeah.
have to put them on a line, yes.
Yep.
I mean,
I think season two felt a little disjointed at times. Like they kind of lost the storyline, and it kind of like muddled around in some of the details. But I guess if I were to evaluate a season based on some of its parts, like there were so many just amazing individual episodes in season two, and it's really hard for me to kind of let that go. Like the
Mhm.
story they told about individual characters just kind of blew my mind.
yep.
That's
Mhm.
but that's kind of what I mean. Like, season one is just like it's a really elegant
It's a
story.
complete thing.
Mhm.
Right. It's a
Right.
Mhm.
It's
complete
a
thing.
yeah.
And like season
Yep.
two, just like they're going they're going deep on a lot of elements. And that's, I
Mhm.
mean, the effect of that is going to be that it's a little siloed or disjointed. And then again, I really think, part of what Chris is talking about, and I think why you can kind of look at season three feeling like a little like, they were leaning on past characters and really didn't develop a whole lot further, is that season three is setting up for like season, like there is a larger world that, I mean, they are kind of passing the baton. Like
Mhm.
you look at all of those character arcs, like some of the main characters kind of like are have on like little side missions, but like again they are clearly being set up for like larger arcs in season four, right?
Mhm.
Like some characters that like those arcs are like coming to an end, right? You have new characters who are emerging who are like those folks did get Caleb Nichols, like you know who that guy is. Like it's almost creepy how much you know who that guy is. He thinks it's creepy how much who that guy is, and he now can kind of carry that series, right?
I hope so. I have my doubts. Um,
Well, and we will see kind of how far in the future they carry season
yeah.
4, as they teased it'll be in the future. We just don't know exactly how many years. So,
My worry coming into this was, you know, the shift in location. You're like you say, you're widening your world here, and there is something that's really nice about it. For those of you seen Doctor Who, there's a Tennant episode where he's just on a train, and it's like one set basically on a train, and they're trying to decide like, do we? I think if we get out, we're gonna die or whatever, and
oh
there's like
Is that
yeah.
the
invisible things
ghost?
outside or something,
It's like
Yeah. Oh,
Midnight
okay.
on Mars or something. Yeah.
something like that, and it's a
Yep.
great
Oh yeah, that
episode.
one. Yep. Yep.
It's a lot
That one. Yeah.
about the drama and the psychology between the individuals here. It's
Mhm.
like in 12 Angry Men kind of scenario.
Yep.
And Westworld's season 1 and 2 could be pretty cerebral. It could be because it was literally confined in a park, and you don't have to worry about these larger things. And I think going to, if you've seen the movie World War Z, a thing like that where you have a global large scale event is very difficult to portray. And so I was worried about how they're going to do, yeah, man versus machine revolution kind of thing. And are you going to lose that intimate cerebral discussion in exchange for like wide chaos and large, more macro kind of events? Do you think that they succeeded in bringing us to the real world? Was that a fear for you guys as well?
Yeah, I guess I was trying to think about uh I think one of the parts that I felt it was hardest to kind of wrap my arms around what exactly was going on in season three was the time setting. We've had so many moments where we've jumped into different
Hmm.
um, uh, time
It's a
time
non-linear
loops.
way of
Right,
telling the
right,
story. Yeah.
right. And I was just kind of refreshing my memory about some of the things that happened in season two and season three. I was thinking about the moment that uh, William has with his daughter, and we at the time we were wondering whether or not she was a host. This is when like
Mm.
he does Emily does to William what William did to his father-in-law with the
Mm.
fidelity test,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
she shares that like that the forge is gone, that like the system is gone, like this is it's been destroyed or whatever, and we're not really sure what that means exactly, but so I had to look up like what time frame are they trying to talk about with this, and I think this probably comes to a future question you're going to ask about like how long has Bernard been sitting there,
Yeah.
but 2058 I read apparently is the year when they enter the new world.
Okay.
And apparently the when Charlotte is in or whatever our nickname for her is, the Charlotte Dolores combination.
Hail Loris.
Haloris, yeah. It sounds like a dinosaur. I'm talking about the Jurassic
Yeah.
Park. And apparently that's supposed to be quite a ways in the future too. And I don't know. I'm having a hard time. I didn't find the last couple episodes where they showed kind of the melee in the major metropolis that they're in.
Hmm.
I didn't
Mhm.
find that super believable.
Right.
I
I
felt like
agree.
it was, yeah, I felt like it was kind of hey, look at these people punching each other, or look at some of these windows breaking. Hey, a
Yeah.
guy like threw a Molotov cocktail, and like, oh
Right.
yeah, also the world is collapsing.
You froze. Did he freeze on everybody else's screen?
Yes.
Yes. I
Yeah, to kind of carry that sentence, I think, to its conclusion, it felt really small, was kind of both of our impressions watching that revolution. It felt a little contained to one particular area when it feels like it should have been, a bigger world revolution kind of visual
Hmm.
indication for us. So as Chris gets back for a second, Tay, what did you think?
I mean, I loved Marshawn Lynch.
Yes, perfect timing.
There you go.
That's
Yes,
right.
Marshawn Lynch.
Got my Skittles shirt on,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
Giggles as he's called in Westworld.
yeah. No, beast mode is the future. I think we can all agree on that. Like, uh,
Absolutely.
I think folks were, if anybody watched the behind the scenes, they talked about, if you just look around, the future is now, and we found it in Singapore or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you also found it in Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, I think, it's, I'll maybe just like play the devil's advocate here.
Hmm.
Okay.
In terms of like, because I mean, they were specifically set in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
and part of it was, maybe not trying to drift too far away from like, what would happen in like a particular setting, right?
Right.
Not trying to say like, here's what would happen across the globe, to
Yeah.
detract from like,
Right.
you know, and so the thought experiment is, and what we're trying to judge is like how, like the fidelity of like, if something like, what is depicted happened, like what would the outcry be?
Yep.
Hmm.
And, I don't think it's too hard to start like thinking about like, you look at, I'm trying to think of what the movie is called. That is basically exactly the pandemic. Um,
Well, like so there is the movie literally Contagion.
yes,
Which you,
Contagion.
Hmm.
So
okay. Yep.
right, and so like a lot of folks have during our current pandemic pointed to how close like Contagion actually got to like what our actual response has been.
Sure.
And then there's also obviously differences, and like to me, it's like yeah, I don't imagine there being like widespread revolution. I think like a lot of people are going to be figuring out what they need to do. Some people are going to be out in the streets, and those people are going to be, met by police. I think it was pretty,
Sure.
that to me seems fairly accurate as to what I would imagine an early stage riot would look like.
Hmm.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think um, to kind of build off of that, I think the writers can't do too much at one time, which is why sort of like Caleb Nichols was our, focal point for entering into the real world. Like, you know, we can't show everybody interacting with the entire real world all the time because we don't really know what this world is yet. So we're going to sort of like funnel Dolores's and, the other hosts' interactions with this new real world through the eyes of like this one human real kind of narrative character. And like we're going to start small so that the audience feels that they can grasp how we've moved into the world, and then we can build out from there. And I mean, it makes sense if they follow that same kind of pattern like you said with a riot. Like we start in this one location and then we build out from here.
yeah.
So it's, the audience can be introduced to it without being overwhelmed.
Yeah. I welcome back, Chris, by the way. Um the I don't know if you saw in our wrap up or before of Westworld, but we kind of talked about how useless Bernard was a lot of time, and how it might have been a useful thing to give him to do would be to have him trying to accommodate to human life or whatever, making some sort of strong connections, the family or whatever, maybe, some sort of emotional ties, and then going through with those characters, the reveal and the release of this information on everyone. So it could be something very dire, about her, yeah, maybe the kid and whatever, So that it would be something for Bernard to do. It'd be continue his conflicting story of how his grappling with his past memories and what he knows he is. And then it would be conflicting for him, make it more difficult for him to decide, am I kind of on Dolores's side or am I opposed here, to see that hurt up front? Because basically what we got is some random people on the subway with like quick shots of what's going on in their life. We had a therapist hang herself, and then some riots, and it didn't have the emotional impact I think that it could have if we'd known someone and known how it would directly impact them. Or no, or should Bernard be just left to be kind of following Dolores around
So that
most of
all
the
right.
season?
I was gonna say there's a lot of different ways that you can take where you went with that, John. But if you want, let's go down the Bernard rabbit hole because I think that one is an interesting one. I think the scene in the finale where he's with, let's just for lack of the to make it less complex, his former wife, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, to me, that sums up what Bernard's arc was in this whole series, and particularly why, the lesser Hemsworth brother was with him the entire time as well. Is like their lesser Hemsworth brother is there to protect Bernard, right?
What a bang up job, right?
Yeah.
And what
I
and
Or
what
mean,
actually Stubbs. We've just like trashed him all over this
I
podcast,
wh-
but
what I,
really.
what I love, just as a sidebar, what I love about Stubbs in this whole thing is that he starts shot through the neck and he ends shot through the neck, and
No.
just like because and then, at the end also we don't know. Like, Bernard says, "Hey, I'm gonna throw some ice on you, and that'll help like stop the like you from
Right.
decaying, and I'll patch you up when I'm done with this thing." And like we know that quote unquote done with this thing involves a lot of dust.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know what's happening to Hemsworth in the tub over there. Like, is he just a
Right.
skeleton at
In
this
that how
point?
many years?
Right. But anyway, back at the farm. So, it,
Oh, you're really quiet,
what
Chris.
happened? What happened to Chris? So, in addition to, like Hemsworth being there to, defend him, it seems like Dolores's kind of like sub programming was meant to keep him away from everything. Like he constantly kept being sent on these long arcs away from the central action,
Mm-hmm.
including like at the critical moment, like when he would be most drawn to the center of action where like he could be killed or like where Sirach could get his hands on him because he wanted that key. He gets
Mm-hmm.
pulled to, like almost to the polar opposite to like
Right.
this emotional center point to like a closure on this other thing.
That's an interesting point that you bring up because I hadn't thought before. I mean, Dolores is the one who brought Bernard's pearl into this real world. So she could have, had some sort of like sub programming
well,
that
he,
that like you said kept him away. I hadn't considered that
yeah,
before.
no, I mean he says like, she, he like throughout the season he said like she implanted something in my mind.
Right,
You
right.
know,
Which
and
I which I had assumed once
it
it was revealed it was the forge, but she, like you said, she could have done some other things while
well,
in there as
that's the
well.
thing is like what does putting the forge do to like
Right,
the rest of the programming? Like, and I mean,
right.
you know, obviously this is all just fantasy anyway, so like you can just kind of imagine like he
Mhm.
clearly was guided because I mean he even says I literally just watched the season finale again.
Mhm.
He says to Stubbs like I got to go in and talk. He thinks he's going into the house to confront Dolores. Like, so
Right.
he thinks he's going in. He thought he's driving this car. He can't patch up poor Hemsworth because he's got to stop Dolores. And he gets into the house, and when he realizes it's not Dolores, he doesn't immediately go back and go try to find Dolores and say, "Oh,
Right.
Drat, I was tricked." He's just like, again,
He
it's
stops
like
for that
he
moment.
stops
Yeah.
for that moment and he stays there. And so
Mhm.
you have to imagine there was something in his subconscious, or in this case, a subroutine, and I don't know if that's linked to the forge, if that's something Dolores slipped in there.
Sure.
It's not explained. It doesn't have to be explained. It can just,
Sure.
but it's kind of obviously they're driving him away from harm.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say as a viewer, for me, that sort of explanation would be at least a little bit satisfying to understand maybe why Bernard seemed so on the fringe this season. Like he kept being there, and you kept being like, "What are you doing? Like, what is your purpose?" And now I finally feel like we got one for him.
Chris, is your proper mic back?
I'm not sure. Is it?
No.
No, you
What
sound
is
very
happening?
fuzzy.
You're from a very distant.
Yes. Mm-mm.
Um,
No, we sound like we're on like walkie talkies or like a transistor radio.
yeah. I can turn. Let's see what happens. I turn your volume all the way up. I get really loud then.
I got all the settings where they should be. I think I got all the output.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to. We're gonna have all the cameras
Is this where
mixed
the
up again
technical
here.
difficulties
Y-
scene comes into play?
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, we can.
We have many, so
Alan, why don't you transition to the technical difficulties screen, and we'll keep talking, and have Chris leave and come back in, and see if it can
My
get
head
it right.
my headphones.
Oh, hey, that's better.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's through my headphones, not the actual mic.
Sure.
yeah.
I don't know.
Mic would be
I
preferable.
I
You
don't know.
could disconnect, unplug, replug.
Yeah, let's try that quick.
Okay.
Okay.
See what happens.
So, yeah, we'll have to save up some of these questions for Chris when he gets back.
Is it any better right now?
Yes.
That is better, yeah. Try saying something again.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Yep.
there we go.
There you're back.
Sounds good. There we go. Perfect. Nice. Um, so
Smooth
in
work by our producer, Alan.
yeah,
All right, do we got it?
We
yep, we got
gotcha.
it.
Okay,
Is
sounds good.
there anything kind of says is there anything you have to add about Bernard's purpose or how we've transitioned in the world in a larger scale or any of that stuff?
Is that to me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I I'm curious what kind of about what Tay was saying is so when Lawrence appeared as presumably I imagined that might be
It is. It's the final
another
Dolores.
the final Dolores, right?
Hmm.
So when he says go to her or go see her, um we like Tay said we thought that maybe he was going to go see Dolores specifically and it turns out to be his former wife or however you want to phrase that. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly his function is, but I don't know what else I can add outside of the fact that I was really compelled by Bernard's character in the first half of season 2, and I don't understand exactly uh, what his function is right now. And I put this as a comment on one of the questions later on. But what is it precisely that he's supposed to find in the forge? Like, what is it that he's supposed to stumble on in the sublime? Like, I
Yeah.
don't. What could possibly be worth, like, let's just throw out numbers there. What could possibly be worth 10 years? How long does it take for that much dust to collect unless like that hotel he's in gets hit by some sort of bomb and it shakes a bunch of dust out of the ceiling?
I don't know,
Like,
Chris. That's a pretty seedy motel. That could just been like
could be. It could
That's
be
actually
3
that's
weeks.
actually what I thought it was at first until they confirmed in the after episode that like no, that dust means time. I was like, could have just been like a week or two. You don't know.
So
Mhm.
do we think that William being killed off and replaced by Hale,
Yep.
do we think that that is happening on the same timeline as Bernard waking up? Or do we think that those are staggered? Because there's no way that Heloris could have gone to Dubai and built this entire host army in just like a weekend.
Yep.
So
Right.
we know that's all. We know that also has to be in the future. So like, are we assuming that Bernard is waking up about the same time that William is killed finally? Like, I don't know what the.
I would imagine so. Like William goes blood splattered, which means in my mind immediately, and then drinks the whiskey, and is like, "Give me the list of Delos assets." Basically saying
Mhm.
chop chop. So I would
Yep.
imagine that confrontation with Hale Loris happens pretty much immediately
Mhm.
afterwards, and so like again,
Right.
then there's time, more time lapses, and then you
And then
have
Bernard wakes up.
Bernard. I do like wonder if like Lawrence Loris, which by the way,
Mhm.
I'm gonna throw out the missed opportunity of DeLawrence.
Ooh, yeah. I'm gonna switch it. It's official.
So does DeLawrence, because he's with the SWAT team and he's got a whole bunch of explosives, and you see the explosives go off, and
Hmm.
you kind of have the impression that OG Dolores, aka Dolores Prime,
Hmm.
like her intention was for all the other Doloreses to die. You
Hmm.
Mhm.
know, so is DeLawrence? Is he on a suicide mission and gets exploded, and what we see at the end of the season finale is DeLawrence, dying in fire, or is DeLawrence out there still? I don't
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny to think about, if OG Dolores intended for all of her copies to die, she did not achieve that goal. Um, because obviously Hale Loris is alive and building, a host army. We've got Connell Loris, who was blown up, but the pearls survived and now is with Hale Loris, presumably, unless she put it somewhere. We've got Sato Loris, who was killed by Maeve Clementine, but they took his head with them, presumably with the pearl in it. So they've got one Dolores. And then we have Dolorence, who we, you know, saw but didn't actually see blow up. You know what I mean? Like that was the implication that that happened, but like we didn't see like physical pieces of a body blown up. So I mean, that's actually, 3 out of the 5 seem to be just fine.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you take the end of the season, did OG Dolores actually die? Or was her pearl somehow uploaded into Rehoboam and she just needs to be unlocked? So
I mean,
potentially 4 out of the 5 are fine.
Caleb instructed Rehoboam to erase itself, and theoretically,
Yeah.
any data that Dolores would have uploaded, like I don't know, I the
Well, you cut
Did
out.
I lose audio again? Yep. 1 second. It's doing the same thing it was doing before, but I think we should be okay. Am I right now?
Yep. I mean,
Okay.
sort of.
yeah. So the character I found most unbelievable in this in this season was Hale.
Okay.
And I just felt like, at what point are these memories? We're led to believe that Dolores is gone, like Dolores's consciousness is gone; it's been erased. So, but at what point do all the memories that she had up until the moment when they were put in a different body, like at what point do those memories come back and play a role in the storyline? I don't think that we're done with Dolores.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a show where death seems to be nothing. And they always, there's people like Clementine, you know, okay,
Right.
brought her back, but it's I don't know, it's a tough thing for them to tackle with, because anytime you have a show or like a comic book movie or something where there's no permanent death, um you have trouble, or you run into the problem of losing real drama. And
Mhm.
so I think they need to be careful here. Probably real original Dolores Prime should be dead. You
Yeah,
need to
probably.
have these things need to have impact
Mhm.
at some point.
Right.
But all the memories that Dolores had are still in those 5 other pearls, all the way up until the point at which they were copied. So, like, they
Yeah.
all experienced all of her growth up until the point that they left Westworld. So, I just don't. I don't know.
But now they've experienced new things, though.
Right.
Hale
Mhm.
obviously is a perfect example of that. But they've all like taken their own paths of growth, which
Mhm.
Mhm.
I guess we can get into. I think is one of the cooler themes of the season. Of It's the nature versus nurture. It's the if you were genetically all you,
Mhm.
your code was the same, but you went through a completely different set of experiences in life. How drastically different are you? And do you buy the way they sold how uh, Halores became much her own character, took on that life, and distinguished herself from other Dolores? You've been gone some, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't. I don't buy the transition that she made. Like, I mean, I get the function that it plays in the storyline, but I don't feel like I I was trying to think about what did Dolores as Hale experience outside of this connection to a family that apparently, like, she was outed because she cared too much about the people
Yeah.
that she didn't care about. So, what part of like Hale's life story would have made her more compassionate to the point that she wanted to revolt against Dolores and then apparently create a host army to tear the world down? Like, I don't understand the
Well,
character math that they're trying to play out, and it happens so fast. I don't know.
there are two jumps there, though. There's the one
Mm.
where at first she's scratching her skin off and stuff because I'm not this person,
I buy
and
that. I
I'm,
buy that part.
and then moving to like, there's a family here and they see me away, and I'm
Mhm.
all of a sudden thrust, these responsibilities are thrust upon me that I feel importance for. And now my kid is being confronted by a pedophile. Like, wait, that's not my kid, but I have to take
Right.
care of them, like, and so that changing of your psychology there to like, really morphing into this other role that you just are now, another identity. And there's that jump and how you change as a person. And then
Mm.
there's the other jump of like, well, yeah, you're right. But you really screwed me over here, original me or whatever. And I'm tired of it. So now we're just going to go full apocalypse here or whatever.
Right, full tilt.
I just
Hmm.
so the whole transition challenge I never got. Like, why didn't you know DeLawrence, why wasn't he scratching his skin off, right? Or
Mm.
Connell's Loris, or Sato Loris, or any of them. I mean,
Because
Because the car
because this
accident.
season had issues with consistency. That's why.
that's well, and
Right.
that's the answer. And like that part is, again, I think it's a jump. And then on top of that, I just I have a tough time with how dramatic Hale Loris is. Like, just way too much drama. Way too much drama. Again,
And
tone
I
is just not consistent.
don't understand her end game. Like,
Right.
so her method, because she felt like Dolores Prime had asked her to be a cruel, ruthless person to take over, to ensure that Delos stayed in their hands and wasn't taken over, and identify this identity of this person who was like playing a larger game, which she did successfully because she wanted to push back against Dolores's like commands to do that because she was like humanized by her dead family. Like the outcome is she goes off the deep end the other direction and tries to tear down humanity supposedly by this the host army that she's creating in Dubai. Like, I don't understand, like,
I
even
mean,
more so the transition. I don't understand her motive transition.
okay, so I suppose that there is a larger imagery that they're shooting for here. And I mean, it's basically, Dolores Prime, almost. And I mean, this is like Matrix Revolutions homage, like crucified, put out, like plugged into Rehoboam, like,
Mhm.
Yep.
like, and then basically Hale Loris being like, it's the duality of good and evil, right? Like, I can see them going for that, which is sure, that's a lot of stories do that. Like, for example, Matrix Revolutions. Um,
Mhm.
but again, it's like I don't understand how, like, the drama and like like, I just don't, the match of the motivation to the emotion is, I think, what Chris is aiming at. The same thing is there with Maeve too. I don't get why I don't get the passionate hatred Maeve has for OG Dolores. I just
Mhm.
don't get it.
Right.
And like,
Yep.
they keep trying to bring it back to her daughter,
Which
which,
she's never done anything to.
right. And then,
Right.
like, to me, I don't understand what, like, there was a more obvious, like, you know like Sirach just has that button, and the
Yeah.
answer
Mhm.
to
Right.
me, like, I don't hate you, but like
Mhm.
Sirach is, I am Sirach's slave. Like, you
Right.
could have just
Right.
been that,
Mhm.
and that would have made a
Right.
lot more sense, you
That's
know.
why.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we've gone this long talking about the season without, mentioning Sirach, who's our like main
Mhm.
antagonist in this season. But yeah, he's built to be like the antagonist, but somehow people keep forgetting that. Like Hale Loris forgets that, Sirach is the one who blows up her family. And then Maeve sort of like skips right over the fact that Sirach has a button that he's threatening to shut her down with, and also is like, oh, by the way, I mean, I'm going to help you see your daughter, but there's no place for you in this world. So you're going to have to go where she is. And that's your only
Mhm.
choice.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, no, and that's why to me there was the season. I liken it to anime where a lot of stuff could have just been solved by like an adult conversation. So you have
hmm
these advanced artificial intelligences, that are basically ready to just slug it out with one another. When why, why is Dolores Prime not keying every one of her copies in on her plan?
Mm.
Why do they
right,
not all
Mhm.
understand that she has chosen to see the good in humanity? Why do they
right.
not understand, like, it seems like they don't get the larger part of the picture sometimes. Why
hmm
does Bernard have to be kept in the dark? Why
hmm
Mhm.
why does that conversation between Dolores and Maeve have to happen at the very end when it's too late? Instead
Mhm.
it's before, when Maeve crushes or not Maeve, Halores crushes Cowboy's Pearl,
Oh, Hector.
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, Hector. And then it's just like, where is the time to sit down? Like, they should have been friends. They should have been on the same side.
right.
It was just such a missed opportunity, because to me, it felt like they're ready to make, maybe this is HBO's push, but they wanted to make some John Wick stuff here. And
Mhm.
I don't know. It didn't seem like a natural fit for Westworld or true to these characters.
I think it's gonna be. I think season 4 is gonna be pretty dark. Like, I think this we'll talk about this again, I'm sure later. But this relationship between the two different AI intelligence networks. So you have Solomon and you have Rehoboam. Like, one kind of recognizes that there's some sort of coexistence to be had, whereas Solomon's output was always try to stall like society from collapsing by weeding out these outliers. And like, I think it's really interesting that Haloris decided to make the Man in Black as like her sidekick. Like, it's kind of a
Yeah.
weird, like, the Man in Black is like the epitome of
No, yet.
Not
God,
again.
Yay.
God.
Christopher. If
And on
I'm
a
sure,
cliffhanger too. I don't know what the
yeah.
epitome of what.
I know.
We
So
should.
many things.
Can we play a guessing game as to what he is the epitome of?
Hmm.
um, um,
Let's
hmm,
see. The epitome
epitome of.
of. Oh, I
Uh,
mean, I want to say like.
I have snarky things to say, but I'm not say
Well,
them.
you gotta have one snarky thing, John. Come on.
Yeah, that's this. I don't know.
I mean,
What's the epitome of?
he's kind of the epitome of violence. Like that's sort of. I mean, that was a little bit of his like lesson that he was learning while he was in that rehab sort of mental health facility,
Right.
where all like the different versions of William are like that violent crazy person that you thought you were, that you just like exercised in the park. That's not a piece of you, that is you.
Right. I think he's the epitome of all that is bad about humanity.
I know, I
And
was gonna say like the epitome of evil, but that felt like so large. But I mean,
Well, so let's talk about that then with William. How do you buy his growth? Because to me, again, a lot of this season had to do with nature versus nurture. And when you see his childhood, his things like, oh well, he hit a kid, he's always
Mhm,
had darkness in him. I'm like, boy, I don't know. I'm not sure if that really sells the how
mhm.
he would become the dark person he became.
Right. Yeah, yeah, we kind of get a little bit of a backstory, but kind of a weak backstory, I think, for as far as like violent motivations go.
Yep.
Um,
It could have been
which
a
I mean
lot
is
worse. you know.
Right. It's
Yeah.
it's fine if like we just want to like go ahead and say like this is his character. Sure, he had some bad stuff, but it's just not enough to like justify, I think. You
I
know what
think
I mean?
it was a clever way to do exposition. I mean, that's for sure.
Sure.
And, I think it does kind of paint the Man in Black as, the epitome of human evil, right? And
Mhm.
Halorist is the epitome of like machine evil,
Mhm.
right? And so those two are now like teamed up, right?
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
And they've got their army of darkness, right?
Right.
And then you've got like the disciples of, OG Dolores in like Maeve, who's kind of had like a, you know, Saul to Paul like conversion on the road to Damascus type,
Mhm.
experience. And then like her actual like anointed like, you know, champion, Caleb,
Mhm.
you
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
Jesse Pinkman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how welcome back, Chris. I kind
Man,
of wonder how Maeve might use the pearl that she's gotten from Sato Loris, if she still has it.
If she still
And
has it, that's a good question. Although, uh, John, do you
because we
have?
kind of got questions about like at least 3 of these pearls, who might have them and where they might go.
Well, I'm curious what John, like what non-snarky answer John has to the epitome question before Chris actually reveals what the Man in Black is the epitome of,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, boy, I
Non-snarky
was
answer. Yeah, I
I was
don't
on a
know.
roll.
or a snarky answer, or both. Porque no los
Oh,
dos.
I was just gonna say toxic masculinity, but I'm not gonna. I don't have another answer, I guess.
All right, Chris.
The real answer, Chris.
Time for the
Yeah,
big reveal.
I figured I'd make you wait. No, yeah, I mean, so like the Man in Black is the epitome of William being broken by Westworld, right? Like that's him at his worst.
Mm.
Like William
Okay.
came in as this like I found him so I was just talking to another friend who just started Westworld at my recommendation, and he
Nice.
was and he was William was so compelling in season 1 as like honestly like the Dolores figure, the person who chose to see the good in this society, and like Westworld broke him. Like his experience at the end of season 1 kind of ruined his humanity, and he realized that like actually like my real version of myself is this evil side. And so like when Heloris decided to recreate that like most evil iteration of William, like that has to be a
Yeah.
sign of something pretty dark to come, because regardless of whether you believe the transformation of Heloris from original Dolores, like they've deviated in just a couple of weeks from someone who chose to see the beauty in society to someone who
Yep.
like wants to rip it apart.
Exactly.
It's like, so there's some pretty dark stuff coming. That was all I was trying to say.
I mean, that's the question. Do you believe that he was this has always been him, and
Mm-hmm.
Westworld exposed that, or
Mm,
that Westworld did this to him? I think that this season puts forth that he's always been this,
sure,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
um
self-discovery in a bad way.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Westworld was always destined to disappoint him in some fashion.
Yeah,
Like
we were led to
in
believe
in
that
the in the
Westworld broke him. Yeah,
yeah, in the sense of like I thought he could see himself being better in Westworld, and it proved disappointing because he wasn't.
I
So the
Do you know what I
think
question,
mean? Like this was his
okay.
chance to like be a better person, but it didn't work out because he just isn't a better person.
so. Again, I think that this is getting a little into the like the imagery and the weeds,
Sure.
right? But part of it is I wonder if that's what they're trying to say with like, I mean, because the Man in Black, versus like William, who like comes in, and I think he's actually in white. I don't have the photographic memory on that.
he,
I think
he
he's
chooses the
Yeah.
tan suit and hat
yeah,
Yep.
versus the
Yep.
black.
yeah,
He has the
right.
choice.
So
yeah,
he's got the
yeah.
white hat. So literally, you have the white hat coming in, and
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
then the Man in Black just kills
Coming
him,
out, yeah,
like just
Yeah.
yeah,
kills him.
right.
Yep.
And
Yeah, that
so
was a
like you're watching like the Man in Black, the worst part of, and I think that's maybe what they're trying to say about all of us is like we have elements of both of those things of good and bad and like in
Mhm.
us. And so what they're setting up for season 4 is that like that duality that we've been wrestling with of like, is William like the good, or is he like, is Westworld, is he the bad? He was both. He was both. But
Mhm.
now like the evil has definitely killed the good. We have seen that. And,
So
and what's we're going to see is the manifestation of evil moving forward.
we get the transition in this season, and then with his daughter in the last one of
Mhm.
him being evil, but we're not. No one's called evil for killing a whole bunch of people senselessly in a video game. And so
Right.
I want to pose the question. So if a situation, if this world is created, and this is kind of obviously a topic of earlier seasons where you have machines, not humans, and you're thrown in there, are you doing evil? Is that even possible at that point to a machine? And one, does it reach that point?
Well, I think I mean William always said, or he said throughout the first couple seasons that like he went to Westworld over the years just to kind of exercise his demons, but really he
Mhm.
was fueling them the entire time. And I don't know. I think Dolores believed that the people that needed to craft peace between humans and hosts had to be someone that saw them as some type of being, because I mean that was the
Sure.
whole point of the
Yep.
story of Caleb
Yep.
uh, refusing to let his subordinates like rape these
Yep.
townspeople that they saved in this military exercise. So
Mhm.
That were
I think the
machines.
outcome has to be right. Yeah, I think the outcome has to be some recognition that there's humanity in these consciousness beings. Maybe not the robots we're used to, but the robots that have evolved in the next 50 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
it's an argument for kind of the like moral relativism, right? And the
Yep.
importance of
Mhm.
perspective. Like that's ultimately what you're saying, right,
Mhm.
Chris?
Mhm.
Well, and I think it's an interesting point that like Westworld doesn't it's not like a place to just be like an entirely different person. Like Caleb I think makes a choice in this like whatever I don't think it has a name yet, but whatever the sort of like training world is that
Mhm.
he's
Yeah.
in. He like makes a moral choice to help another person or someone who he believes is close enough to a person to deserve his help, and doesn't deserve to just be like used as a machine. And he does the same thing when he like helps Dolores at the beginning of the season, like, and she like stumbles into that tunnel and she's kind of passing out, and he's got like a mission on a Rico app, and he could just like be like, no, this isn't my thing, like this isn't you know what I need to be doing tonight, but he stops and helps her. And
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
it's very telling that he chooses to help in the situations that he chooses.
I do think it is about kind of that choice, though, right? I mean,
Mhm.
um, and you think about though how he frames it, right? He's not saying he didn't when he says like when he makes a choice and kind of encourages the troops, not to rape the group of hosts, right?
Mhm.
He doesn't say, "Come on, guys, these are sentient beings." He
Right.
Mhm.
says, "Come on, guys, we're not like those rich assholes."
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like we're better than that. It's about who we are as people. And like interestingly, that same concept is echoed back to him by Dolores. She's like,
Right.
like she said, I'm trying to remember the exact quote. She basically says, right, you're more than like your past. You're like you are your choices moving forward.
Mhm.
Well, and I'm not. I don't want to be too highbrow here with this suggestion, but like if we get back to the question about like are these robots really like do they have are they people, are they beings to be considered like in the plans for the future, like who really is human in this story? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, are you really human if your outcomes are controlled? Like, are you really human if you're like if any decisions you make outside of a broader like line for yourself, you're muted or you're deleted from the system. So
Mhm.
like without free will, are you really is there much humanity at all to be had? So like I think that robots are the hosts are closer to the humans than we might care to think, just because their insides don't look the same.
I was gonna say that's an interesting point because we find out at the end that Sirach has never really been calling the shots this whole time. It's been
For
Rehoboam.
a while, yeah.
Mm, mm,
And he's using Sirach
mm.
pretty directly, kind of like a um
Host
yeah,
host
kind of
body.
exactly
Yeah.
like a host. I mean, he's a machine controlling a human body, much the way a host would control, a
Yep.
pseudo human body,
A meat clone,
whatever
if you will.
material they're made out of. So, I mean, is Sirach human or is he a host at this point?
Mhm.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on, I mean, you gotta define human.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's something that's more physical that you're
Mm-hmm.
adding to that definition, or if it's something more like, I don't know. I mean, is the
Cerebral.
body, well, yeah, is the body what makes, is that a critical juncture into making you human? I mean, I think the question is more not so much what's human or not, but is this other thing also valuable like a human is,
Mm-hmm.
is the matter of being sentient the only thing that makes you worthy of the same level of respect?
I will make the second plug of the episode for Altered Carbon because we're getting dangerously close to the same questions that show tackles. But like, yeah,
Sure.
I would I don't want we don't need to talk about this piece the entire time, but I think there are plenty of hosts that have showed more humanity than humans in this show.
Hmm.
So
Yep. Well,
How are
I
you
mean, to
relating that
me,
to Altered Carbon?
no, just what John was saying with regards to is it the body that makes you human, or is it the shared experience, the sentience?
yep.
And
Like
obviously in
both.
Altered Carbon, like the bodies are meaningless. It's merely your collection of shared experiences.
Also,
Yeah,
Poe
that's
is
what I was
just like
going
the
for.
most human
Yeah.
character in that entire
Yes.
in the Altered Carbon.
Yep.
Who
Yes,
is?
Mhm.
absolutely. Poe.
Yep.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I
The
mean,
only
it's
non-human,
something
basically.
it's something I like to think about is, because if we'll undoubtedly reach first, um, something that at least appears sentient, self-aware, uh, without a body first.
Hmm.
The physical forms that resemble a human are very far behind, and I mean, look, so are the AIs, but it seems to reason that we'll reach the not the fusion of the two real quick. And I wonder, is everybody? I mean, we're so quick to anthropomorphize anything, a fan or a tea kettle or a teddy bear, and make it human, and we feel bad for it. Will humans en masse accept something that is indistinguishable from themselves as not of value and be willing to rape it and murder it, even if you're told, like, here's a park, go in, have fun, do whatever you want? There's no consequences, they're not real. um, how many people get to that moment then and then are scarred for life because they do something like that, knowing full well it's not a flesh and blood one of us?
I don't know. I mean, I think
I think there are definitely people who in our society today who would let themselves get to the point that we saw. I don't think it's a far leap at all.
oh no, I don't think that that's a far leap. Again, I think it's just a matter of perspective. Like, if they thought these were they were real people, again, I mean, there are thought experiments. Like, there's the shock test that they did, I think at Yale, right, where
Right.
you had people who
Mm.
thought that they were killing real people but still did it, right, because they
Was
thought
that
because of, again, this perceived kind of social contract that they had, right, where it was okay because they're being told to do this. This is the
Right.
same argument that the Nazis used at Nuremberg, right?
Yep.
Like, I think if people think they're going into the park to be a part of like a virtual experience where the rules of morality are off, then that's
Yep.
its own other
Yep. I don't know. I love thinking
Yeah.
about it.
Well,
Where
and
we're gonna get to.
that's interesting because now like these hosts, where you might feel safely okay in the park because it's a park, it's a separate area, it's not real, it's not part of your world, it's a different time, as in Westworld and in Warworld, they're both different time periods than the present. It might feel a little easier to dissociate this, kind of reality. But now that the hosts have entered the real world, does it seem a little bit harder maybe for people to, somebody tells you, oh, it's not human, but it walks down the same street that you've walked down your whole life. This host has an apartment in the same building as you do. Like, does that
Mhm.
factor in at all? Does your environment play a factor in that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, is that like you say, the permission granted thing, like the
Hmm.
what do you deem as an authority, and what credit do you give that in giving you the yes or no to a moral decision?
Right.
And I just think I agree. There'd be plenty of people that would take advantage for sure and not think twice about something potentially. But like I play video games now, and I feel terrible if something happens to a poor NPC or something like that. Ashley was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and she lied to Socrates. I'm like, no, how can you do that? That's terrible. Like, tell him the truth. And, but it just like repercussions, for things
Mhm.
like that, to things that are not even close, because we relate everything to what we are. It's
Mhm.
why we feel sorry for animals, even if they don't they're not understanding the same way we do,
Right.
because we can only understand the way we do. um, and so with a machine, if you're told, well, it's just a machine, but man, it seems like it can reason. I don't know how many people get stopped in their tracks. So, anyways, if you have something else to add to that, for sure. But there's probably some other cool things we can talk about. I haven't been
Mhm.
looking at the list here. What are we missing out on? What are like some other themes to this season? Very different themes to this season, I think, than some of the other ones. I what I appreciated was the first couple seasons were more lofty ideas, more far flung, and this one kind of it's bringing into the real world, sort of brings up more things of today, privacy issues and that kind of thing. Anyone?
I'll jump in. I mean, I like I think that just the whole idea of data, like
Yeah.
we're not, anybody who's read case studies on like, for example, the the Target coupon scheme, and this is like a decade old now, where like they were collecting user data on folks who use Red Card,
Mhm.
uh,
Right.
and was started being able to predict what people would need, and the the anecdote goes that this gentleman came in all upset because Target was um, trying to sell his teenage daughter pregnancy
Yes, I
stuff,
do remember this.
right? And he was all up in arms, and then it turns out she was actually pregnant.
Yep.
And like this is, again, that was 10 years ago. There are now like business school case studies on this, and we're just that much further down the road. I mean, you think about
Mhm.
like how this has impacted politics. If anybody, looks at like Cambridge Analytica and the impact they made in 2016 and in Brexit, right? And how
Mhm.
like they really have shifted like psychology on voting, not just perspective, but actual human psychology, and how people are like reading messages and then pushing them to vote. It's pretty incredible. So to think that, to kind of again project that out 30 years from now, 40 years from now,
Yep.
like like I think that they capture pretty well like where big data could be and how the creep of that could, when we, I mean, I don't think any of us have ever read a user license agreement. right? Like,
Hmm.
and this is kind of the premise the show is built on, is actually like, hey, for 40 years while we were building these supercomputers, like nobody paid attention to the fact that they were just giving away their data so that they could play like Candy Crush.
Yep.
Well, and they don't explore much in Westworld, like the origin. I mean, we know that it was designed by Sirach, Rehoboam, whatever, but we don't get to know a lot about like the evolution of this Rico app. I mean, the like it's become so normal in this like alternate reality that everyone just has this app and it like offers these outliers to do these criminal things, and like Caleb isn't like hiding it when he's in public. He's just scrolling through these various illegal tasks like in the middle of society. And like, I mean, just the amount of I just what we get comfortable with as we give up incremental amounts of data is pretty shocking. Like, I mean, it would not be hard at all to use data against us, like obviously this Rico app did
Mm-hmm.
in that way.
What's the matter, Chris, if you're not breaking the law?
What do you mean?
Well, if you're giving up your data, if you're not being a bad guy, what's the harm?
Oh, sure. I hear you. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think the I don't I don't I know that one of the themes they're trying to talk about is like essentially Rehoboam is running this police state where they can control everyone's outcomes and they have all the data that they need. Like, and obviously Delos contributed to that process. I don't fully understand the connection between like chicken or the egg here. I obviously Sirach and his brother needed the data on people to be able to predict outcomes, and Delos
Yeah.
helped collect that process. But
Right.
that would seem to imply that they have data on every single living person, which isn't true. And so it's not clear exactly how, or maybe I missed
Yeah.
something in the show.
But
Like,
well, I
how
mean,
do
I
they
guess
collect
they're
data on the
saying that
rest of the people?
they have a different, more detailed observation of what people do,
Yeah.
given
Sure.
free range, more extreme situations, that kind of thing. I mean, it's
Sure.
in a park and can be fully monitored and doing.
For the
They also say that
for the
like
top 15% of the population, though, like at
Yeah.
true,
most.
but they do say like I think it's the archive who is like the iteration of Williams, no, not Williams, Delos's son, um who says like, hey, when we finally figured it out, people kind of follow these basic templates. Do you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
they sort of have like now the pattern of like, yeah, I mean, there's lots of different kind of people, but really when you boil it down, people are simple, and we can sort of use these models we've figured out from all this individual data to say like, yeah, there's like 4 billion people maybe who entered our park, but they boil down to like a couple hundred different, types of people that we can then use predictive patterns on. So that's all you have to do then, is to like use that model to apply it to society at large and say like most people are going to fall within these patterns that we found. And then now you can like more readily predict who's going to be an outlier, who like doesn't follow these patterns.
Yeah.
Hmm.
They've really got a great scheme going, because it's something like, the line is, if something's free, then you're the product. Google gives away everything for free
Yeah,
because they don't need to sell you anything, because they're selling stuff about you.
right.
Well, Delos gets to sell you and charge you a good chunk of change to be there. They really got
Right.
the winning ticket there. But yeah, I mean, I liked these themes being talked about in this series, and I think early on they did a pretty good job of conveying dangers, threats, things. I mean, right
Mhm.
now we have, so it's predicts what you're going to do, and then does what it can to send you down that path, ensuring that outcome. Um, I just heard yesterday or whatever, there is I forget if it's a school or who developed a machine learning process that they say with an 80% accuracy will predict whether you will be a criminal just off
Mhm.
your face. It's a facial recognition technology, and oh, it's unbiased, don't worry, or whatever, but it's getting close to that thing. Well, put someone's face in a thing, it's in a database, that's a, I don't know. I like the
Yeah,
relevance of this season.
it's a very Minority Report,
Yep.
kind of machine that it's like, okay, well, I've predicted that you're going to be a criminal, you know, let's see if I'm right. And, if the machine is right, do we start having to like pay attention to that and be like, should we arrest somebody before they've actually committed a crime? It's a very slippery slope of like, what are we doing, with this technology to help and better society? Is it a question of like we're acting proactively to save lives, or is it like, no, we're really just like sending someone down like this prescriptive path now that we've said this is what they're going to do?
Yep.
It's I think it's interesting. I mean, I obviously the data collection. I'm more interested in the
Oh, sure. Yeah.
free will dynamic of the show. But like, I think another interesting dynamic is, and maybe this was intentional so they don't feel like they're recreating some sort of like political narrative. But like Insight and Delos are private companies, and
Mhm.
they're doing this without like any uh
Oversight.
oversight, out without any user agreement, without any like
Well, I'm
at
sure there's a
at what
user agreement. It's
right.
probably
But at what point can does our society reach a level where it doesn't matter what the law says or doesn't say, or how much the government knows or doesn't know? Like, how much data collection can they just do, just because they want to and they can, and you don't have to be part of the system to for them to collect it on you. Like, it's interesting that way.
yeah. I mean, so where do you come down on the free will aspect? Are we just a series of biological, um, versus digital connections,
Mm.
and we're really no different? They have a programming, we have a programming. You know,
Yeah,
theirs are
in a
ones and
different
zeros. Ours are YGAT. Whatever, like
sure.
it's a different.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer to your question, but I do like the metaphor that Westworld uses. Uh, Essentially, not the metaphor, but essentially the visual of Sirach's watch. Like, how far are people
Yeah.
deviating from their lanes that they're supposed to be in? Like, I think that I think that we have a lot less free will than we think we do. I think there's lots of factors that kind of dictate a lot of our outcomes. But yeah, I don't have a specific answer to the question, but I like that it's. I would more likely subscribe to some sort of idea of like, how far are we deviating from our normal path based on our choices, rather than um, we have total free will in all situations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like their treatment of the question, of free
Hmm.
will. I think they do a really good job of like putting that in perspective, and then of course juxtaposing like host versus human. I think it's a really good way of like looking at the question, then the audience can kind of draw their own conclusions about like free will and what does free will actually mean.
Hmm.
What does free will actually mean, Tay?
I knew you were gonna do that.
How much time do we have? How much time do we have left? We can launch another
So
2 hour
you realize he
podcast.
studied philosophy at an Ivy League school. We don't really want to do this. We'll never get out of here.
I don't know. I want to hear a little bit. I mean, to me, there was a lot of issues with this season. There was consistency issues with how the hosts' bodies react to things. There were inconsistencies with the firearms and the accuracy of guns, and like just all over the place. And it was not the same kind of, as you said, Tay, before, elegant storytelling that was season one. But what I enjoyed was the relevance of the thematic issues that we had here. So
Right.
yes, the choice, freedom of will here, freedom of choice, data and your privacy and the meaning of that, those kinds of things were the only reason I really enjoyed this season, is because it makes me think more about those and puts them in a new context.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it kind of the question becomes what story do you tell about your own life, right? And I think to some extent that when you go back to your original question, what is free will? I would say it's the free will is the perception that you have choices with impact, right? That you not
Hmm.
only have choices, but that those choices matter, right? As
Yep.
long as you perceive that that's the case, then that's the case. Then you have free will, right?
Sure.
And so, but that being said, I think, why we're saying Westworld does a good job of treating that is there are so many layers to how much you have freedom of choice and how much those choices really have the impact you think they do, right?
Mhm.
And so there's the like, notion of like free will within like your own individual choices. There's the notion of free will within like I'm born in this time and like I can only, be or do this much, or I was born into poverty versus I was born into like a
Mhm.
wealthy family and I have, these opportunities to me. And I think that is kind of like when the data is leaked, right? Showing like, how people are tracked, right?
Mhm.
I think that's just trying to like that's a way of commenting on how all of these factors impact, you know, who we are and who we can be in life, right? And we don't necessarily think about them. So
Yep.
that's a long and rambling way of saying like free will. It's again, it's a treatment of perception, and I think that that's the kind of like moral relativism that Westworld is trying to like hint at is that a lot of these questions are really a matter of perception.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I would just add to what Taylor said. Like, if that's the filter we use, uh, then hosts in Westworld and humans are identical. Because
Hmm.
outside of the fact that the hosts get to reboot and start their narrative, like they're allowed the latitude to make decisions and make some choices and do some things slightly differently, but their story always starts over in the same place at the same time. So like throughout season 1 and season 2, we got to see some of the hosts do things a little bit differently, like follow a trail based on like where the real humans led them,
Mhm.
and do some slightly different activities. And so, if free will is defined only by having choices that make an impact on like your outcomes, I think what we learned in season 3 is that, according to the Westworld folks, in 2058, we don't really have all that much more free will than the hosts did in Westworld.
True.
Hmm.
Well, the
I'm.
host definitely passed like the most advanced version of the Turing test, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
not only can they respond, but they can
Right.
respond in like a believably human-like way,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
Right.
In all facets. So yeah, I mean, by that standard, they are human.
I mean, by the well, see, yeah, I mean, it does are they human or
Well,
are
they're
they
they're
were
ethically so they're ethically human,
sure.
right?
Right.
Like, and that's what matters.
They have a
Like that's what
moral
yeah,
equivalence of
they're
a
the
human.
moral equivalence of a
Right.
human, and really, at the end of the day, that's what should matter is like the moral equivalence.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yep. Because it's not the question of life or not,
Mhm.
alive or not, but the importance or not.
So
Well,
to
biological life or
right.
not.
So then to like loop this all the way back, they're really asking the question like, so, the whole premise of Westworld is that you're going into the park and these are not morally equivalent people, like in the sense
Mhm.
that their death, their pain, their, pleasure, like their emotions, their experiences are like, objectifiable and like
Playthings,
Yep.
yeah.
yeah, they're tradable, right? Like in a way that humans are not, right?
Hmm.
And like I think that's really kind of what season 1 is all about,
Mhm.
right? It's like like you're really delving into. I mean, that's why they're naked all the time.
Yep.
Is because it
Mhm.
doesn't matter whether they're clothed, they're naked. Doesn't mean they're just like they're objects. They're
Mhm.
machines,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And season 3 now you go the completely opposite way around, and they totally are. I guess the question that's being pushed out is that they're human in a morally distinct and relevant.
Mhm.
So if they're, you know, morally relevant, are they, is something that is arguably not um, real, can it be morally relevant like that? Because I like the definition of real in the sense that something real is that which is not replaceable. So if something is irreplaceable, it's a real thing, that's worthy of being valued. And if it's replaceable, what value does it really have? And if you can make 1 million copies of Dolores and they're all literally identical, is that a real thing that is worthy of value?
Well, to I think scene three puts its finger right on top of that. Like, how often for how long did these Dolores replacements of real humans operate as if nothing has changed in their lives? Like the I forgot his name, but the bodyguard for
Hmm.
the insight
Connell.
guy,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Connell.
Connell. Yep, and Hale for a while, and I mean they clearly proved that these humans were replaceable. And I guess we'll see with William too. Like it was very easy for them to just insert a host in their place and no one
Perceptually
noticed.
replaceable. Yes. So if
Yeah,
we're going
yeah,
again with perception
nothing
is
changed.
reality, then yeah.
Right now,
Yeah.
we can
And I
make an
mean,
argument
obviously,
about like yeah,
we haven't seen enough of like Dolores or
mhm,
like Sato Loris to know like how they fit into everything, or if
mhm.
they deviated from Dolores's prescription for them, from OG Dolores's personality. You know, are they their own people? Like Hale sort of Hale Loris has morphed into her own like unique combination of a person.
Yeah. Well,
Person quote.
I think that's the bigger theme that like Sirach is trying to use Rehoboam to prolong humanity and to kind of stem the tide of its like inevitable collapse based on like what him and his brother kind of witnessed when they were kids. And
Right.
really, I think
Oh my God. Ah,
There it is. There it is.
Right in the middle of like the interesting part.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Um
Well, I
so
mean,
okay, so Tay, I sort of posed this question going off of Chris's, bringing up the fact that like humanity is apparently supposed to collapse in on itself and be destroyed. Um I kind of posed this question when John and I had just done our recap of Westworld. Do you think that's like really the plausible truth that humanity only has the option to destroy itself, or some catastrophic event will happen that, destroys humanity? Or is that because like that's the only future Sirach can see based on his past? Like based on the events he witnessed as a child, is there something wrong perhaps with his programming of Rehoboam that, based on the inputs that he's getting from Sirach, are they flawed in some way that Rehoboam can only predict like an end for humanity?
Uh, again, I think you're touching on, the major theme and kind of what, I think is being set up in season 4, the kind of the struggle of good versus evil. Like, can
Mhm.
humanity triumph, like light over dark, right?
Sure.
Um, and I think, climate change is a good example of this. This is, something that in this time frame that we're dealing with, right?
Mhm.
The now to like the 2050s, 2060s, 2070s time frame, we're going to have to make some really serious choices
Mhm.
about energy and pollution and carbon and whatnot. Otherwise, you're going to see, resource scarcity. You're going to see, as we have, right? Like this is all stuff that is just like happening, right? You're
Mhm.
going to see more and more storms. You're going to see, displacement of people, which, creates, more resource scarcity, which creates conflict, right? Which begets more displacement of people, and that's kind of, you can imagine that as you see more um, more drought, more floods, right?
Mhm.
More wildfires, like you saw in the American West and in Australia. Um, these are things that we're going to be dealing with, and they're going to. I mean, those environmental impacts are going to have socio political, economic, geopolitical impact, right? That we're
Mhm.
going to have to deal with over the next 20, 30, 40 years, right? And
well,
so, sorry, go ahead, John.
I definitely won't delve into the subject too much because I don't want to do like I certainly understand the point you're making and stuff, but I it's a theme of many a sci-fi movie, and it's definitely been a pervasive elements to science fiction and fantasy for many years that will have these issues to deal with and tackle and stuff. I guess I'll just just so there's the evenness on the panel, I'll push back and say I don't necessarily agree with the premise, but
Well,
I
but
certainly
again,
understand the idea that this show would be whatever the catastrophe or issue or humanity will have to deal with
right.
Mhm.
threats and
I,
You th-
problems. And
so you think a problem, no matter what the cause, is inevitable?
that's
well, I don't I think that humanity, if it's to survive, will have to adapt and will have struggles. I don't know that I agree with. I mean, that's the test. The AI predicts the the situation is always a dire one, but you won't know until the time, and
Right.
humans are programming the AI. It's the same thing with the algorithm that just came out now that's 80% accurate. You're going to predict whether you're going to commit a crime or not. They say it's not biased, but humans still program these things.
Right.
It's you can't prove it until it exists, you know.
yeah, and I think that that's exactly what the question that the series is getting at and is setting up is, can, in the face of that, humans, you know, look for the beauty in things and look for the good as opposed to, you know, be individualistic. I mean, they kind of spell out all the different ways that we can destroy ourselves,
Mhm.
right? And,
Hmm.
and there are a lot of them, and we make these choices every day. And I think that that's a lot of what is being set up is that dichotomy of like, again, what story are you telling about yourself?
Mhm.
Who are you? And that
Mhm.
that is the choice that ultimately the season 3 kind of centers around, you know choosing the type of person that you are.
Sure.
Well, and I don't know that this gets into it, but I can see them getting into it later. And I always like the question of, so say we are going to destroy ourselves in one fashion or another. Um, do we have an innate, like, do we need to exist? Like, you
Mhm.
know, does that matter? I mean, it
Right.
matters, of course, to the individual or whatever, but
Mhm.
ultimately, like, if our fate is doom,
Mhm.
you know, is that n-
Right.
does that matter? Like, are humans? Uh, I guess it's kind of a, I don't know,
Yeah.
nihilistic
It's
view or something, but
Well, no, it's a very Machiavellian question that, is sort of being presented through the example of Sirach. Like, does his end, saving humanity, justify the means of him taking out these outliers who, even if they represent a small percentage of society, are still millions of people, based on like the Westworld producers' math that they were talking about in the kind of after episode. It's like, even if this was just like a fraction of a percentage of people,
Hmm.
it still represents millions of people.
Mhm.
And does the end goal of saving humanity, which Sirach believes that he's doing, whether that's actually the case or not,
right. Yep.
whether Rehoboam is programmed correctly or not,
Yep. It's a
is
good
that
question.
justified in him like proactively taking out these people?
Yep. Is the end goal saving humanity regardless of the cost?
Right.
Or
And saving
is
it for what?
yeah, exactly.
Just the continuation of the species, is that enough
Right.
justification?
Right.
Well, and that's. Can you guys hear me okay again?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're getting too close with the answers, so they're cutting my video feed. But yeah, what I was going to say right before I dropped out is basically what Andrea is saying, that like the whole point of Rehoboam is to kind of stall the inevitable destruction of humanity, and Sirach replaced Solomon because Solomon was like suggesting a plan where and humans can kind of coexist, even if the cost was greater. And so Rehoboam's like whole plan is kind of string this out and preserve humanity. And I guess the question that I have is, if humans don't really have a tremendous amount of free will, and if their outcomes are dictated for them, like what is it that they're saving? Like
Yep.
there's not a lot of happy people in this season 3 real world. Like everyone has ulterior motives and there's a lot of suffering, and getting a notification on your phone can destroy your life in minutes. And so really, what is being preserved if this is the cost?
Mhm.
Marshawn Lynch is being preserved, and that's what matters.
Skittles.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Did he survive that gunshot? I don't know.
Absolutely. There's no way
Yeah.
Beast Mode didn't survive that.
Yeah, no, I like the question, and I mean it comes a lot down to where you derive your sense of purpose or meaning,
Mhm.
in existing, And so for me, it's always been, as an atheist, on those things like, yeah, it it doesn't matter. Your your life, what you experience, your joy, that matters to you and those that you care about,
Mhm.
but not on a larger scale. But then someone that maybe has a more um, faith-based understanding of morality would understand a larger element of importance to humanity, and it would be more
Mhm.
apt, I would think, to deem other intelligence as some sort of threat to that.
Mhm. So I felt like to kind of maybe wrap some things up here. I thought that there were a lot of like surprise reveals in this season. They did a lot of like big things where they were like, "Oh my gosh, this huge moment." Um like, all the pearls that Dolores snuck out of Westworld being copies of herself. Or Bernard had the key to the forge all along. Did you guys feel like there was a particular moment, like a shocking moment this season that you were just like, did not see this coming?
Oh, Dolores making copies of herself. Did not see that
Okay.
coming. Did not see that. Just
Mr.
well,
Smith, it's
Yeah.
back to the Matrix.
Mhm.
you know is she just a virus come to
Yeah.
take over the system,
Yeah.
or is she the antivirus come to wipe the planet of the virus? uh,
Yeah, I thought that my biggest surprise was, Dolores making copies of herself. And then at the end, when her plan wasn't to destroy humanity exactly, but to like set it free. And she was like, I see the beauty. And I was just like, that
yeah,
is not where
it
I
was.
saw that going at
I
all.
agree. I
I
think
mean,
that might be my one too. It's like
like
I feel like we could have been clued in on this. Like we didn't
Yeah.
this
Mhm.
didn't need to be a mystery.
see, I guess I always kind of saw Dolores's plan as a little ambiguous, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I know that it wasn't a surprise to me, or it wasn't as
Okay.
surprising. Again, it was just the piece that just the multiple copies was just did not see that coming.
Yeah.
I was surprised that only um Dolores and Maeve downloaded the Kung Fu app.
Program.
Yeah. And all the other
Via the
hosts
Matrix.
didn't. They just like, oh man, I should have jacked in and downloaded that programming, because that would have been handy right now.
That would have been
Yeah.
Um,
super handy.
So would building jumping, but we've yet to see it.
I know. I just,
And the
yeah,
military helicopter.
They also got the kill always everyone with one bullet automatic aim
Yeah.
app.
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
want. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Well,
We're in throughout.
that one gun does all the aiming for him.
Yep. Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
Though there are flaws in and bring it back to Altered Carbon and some of Kelchrist Falconer's teachings, there are flaws in trusting your weapons,
Exactly.
as the Yakuza found out when Maeve was just
Mm.
like, "Oh, you want to, use a machine to aim at me?
Yep.
I'll teach you."
I can use
Yeah.
that machine.
Yeah. I don't I have no idea. I don't know how anyone else feels about this, but ever since the end of season 2, I've been annoyed by not knowing anything about what the Forge is. Like
Oh,
what
okay.
the
Well,
Valley
it's
Beyond
Tron.
is.
I mean, it's Tron.
It's
It's just
paradise.
it's a
Yeah.
digital paradise, a digital world, create a
Yeah.
construct, to bring it back to Altered
Well,
Carbon,
It's
created
And
for.
or it's the
yeah.
Matrix
Right.
for
It's like an after.
redeeming.
It's like an afterlife, essentially. Like that's the function it serves in the storyline. Like, but I don't know what it means for. Speaking about things that surprised us, like I know a lot of people were
Mhm.
surprised by Bernard being revealed as the key to the as a key to the Valley Beyond. But I
Right.
don't even know what that I don't know what that means for the storyline. So I guess we have to wait on that one. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
the moment that stuck in my mind from this season is not just that like these outliers were the target of this Rico app to like force certain outcomes. Like that was pretty that was compelling to me. But
I
like the
loved
one visual
that.
yeah, the
That
one
wasn't
visual
like the
that
most
sticks in my mind.
surprising, but that was like the most satisfying to me to like tie that
Yeah.
into something
Yeah.
bigger.
The data dump of people's personal profiles
Oh yeah.
that blew my mind. That was the moment where I'm like, oh wow, like this is a society ender. Like that episode shook me.
Okay.
Sure.
Good. I didn't know if that I felt like that landed well enough or not, you know.
Mhm.
Mm,
But
Yeah, it was briefer than I think, maybe that had a right to be. I mean, that
mm,
is like Chris said, like that's super impactful. That could be a society ender if you knew all these things about people that you previously didn't know and things that they were going to do, things that they had done against you, against people you know. I mean, you know,
yep.
I feel like it got a little bit of brief treatment in the season, but yeah, it's a pretty large thing to do
Download everything
to
Facebook
people.
knows about you, but then if you just tacked on to that
Yeah.
like the actionables taken based upon the
right,
information input.
Mhm.
To
right.
your point though, John, I did feel like I mean, really, I think we were supposed to take the journey kind of at least in part through the mini character of the counselor or the psychologist,
Yep.
Yeah.
and that was
Mhm.
almost unintentionally funny.
Yeah,
Like I
right.
don't
No,
know,
I know
like
what you
if
mean.
anybody else felt that way, but like I mean, part of it is I
It's a
think it's like
passing moment.
yeah, just like the whole thing was so weird and surreal that it was
Yeah.
almost kind of like gallows humor,
Yeah.
grimly funny. Which
Yeah.
I,
That was on the nose.
yeah, ooh, yeah, sorry, pun not intended, but yeah. Anyway,
Well, does anyone have anything else they feel like they have not spoken their piece on with Westworld in general or Westworld season 3 and its themes and characters?
I am
Or anything you want to throw at about where you think season 4 is going.
yeah, I'm really I'm interested to see uh like I read an article in the past couple of days about the meaning behind Solomon and Rehoboam and like why one replaced the other. And it was when Andrew and I watched the finale live, that stuck in my head when we learned that the previous system's name was Solomon, and then obviously the biblical reference is pretty stark for a lot of people. And like Rehoboam was the Israelite king that like made his legacy by ruling a split kingdom, and Solomon was the one that like because of his personal vices saw his kingdom like set up for collapse. And I'm curious to learn more about like I don't feel like we've seen the end uh of Solomon yet. Like Rehoboam is erased, but is Solomon gone? I'm curious about like what Sirach's brother, if there's anything to be had
Mm.
in that storyline, if there is more another role for this larger AI system, that interests me, and I don't want to jump right into another big storyline, but like the biblical connection there, that was designed for people like me.
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, I
No.
think again, I think it's set up to really make the ultimate commentary on good versus evil. Seem
Mhm.
that seems to be where they're heading towards, and they've got some compelling characters that they've really slotted into two clear camps,
Mhm.
as well as some wild cards in there that are going to make the story pretty interesting.
Are we going to see? Is this all out war? I mean,
I
are
think
they going
so.
to keep bringing it to that scale? They're going
Oh
to.
yeah, I think this is all out war. I mean, that's
Okay.
where we're headed. I think this is, depends on how many seasons HBO is going to stretch this whole thing out, but
Yep.
this very well. If season, it wouldn't surprise me if season 4 was the last season, and that that this is kind of all out war, you know,
Sure.
Well, has
and
anyone
you
heard
see that
about
play out.
how season 3 has done, viewer wise and stuff?
Viewership for the finale was down. I read,
Mhm.
Okay.
but I don't know.
See, that's been my one of my concerns is that it sounded like they had not gotten the viewership they had anticipated
Yeah.
for particularly season 2.
Mhm.
And then so we had this break, not knowing if we're going to get season 3, and then they renewed it. And I wonder if there was stipulation like, all right, you can't jump around timelines so much, has to be a
Mhm.
little more, so it has to be a little more linear, and we need to up the action. We need to have cool
Yeah.
sizzle reel things we can do here. And
Mhm.
I worry that that's pushing this forward, potentially making it less cerebral, less
Mhm.
personal, and more actiony. And if they're being driven into the, again, all out war on a large scale, um I don't know, it concerns me, especially if viewership is down again. Yeah, maybe they're gonna try to wrap it up in one more season.
Mhm.
Well, and I think the question that I have is, it's obvious who the antagonists are going to be. Like Halloris is the darkest version of Dolores that we have, and the newly minted Man in Black is the darkest version of William that we have, and they have a host army, but we
Yeah,
don't know who's planning on joining Caleb. Like
right.
he's out of allies. Like, so who steps into that role? Does he have to bring people in from Westworld? Is it Bernard? Is he going to bring something back? Is
Well,
he going to recruit humans? So
is
Yeah,
Caleb out of allies though? Because Maeve seemed pretty willing to
yeah,
step up to the plate for him.
that's true. Maeve is a key player, but like Caleb can die. So
Yeah.
yeah. But
so
then Maeve will realize that Caleb's incompetent and not want to follow him anymore because he
that
can't
maybe, yeah.
tie his own shoelaces, apparently. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mm.
that was my impression of Caleb. I enjoyed his backstory, but he just, his best moment of leadership was when he told his fellow soldiers to not
Yeah.
rape
Right.
these people.
Yep.
Right.
That's
Mhm.
it. He didn't
Well,
grow
that
from there.
and that
Right.
was
Um,
before he was broken as a human.
Yeah. And so he's supposed to be the John Connor or the John Connor of this story, leading a revolution or whatever. And I don't see it. So he doesn't
Mhm.
inspire leadership to me. But maybe that's next season.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. The finale. Alan shared the
Wow. Half
viewers
of
here.
from 2. Yeah. Down
Huh.
by half
So
from
not a good
season 2.
sign.
No, no, it's not, unfortunately.
So adding action sequences and trying to be John Wick didn't make a difference. HBO.
So
Just so you're aware.
Yep.
yeah, go back to season 1 and see what worked, I guess.
Yeah.
I think we have to consider context too. Um the the finale released during a moment in which 4 out of 5 people in the world were trapped inside their homes, and they have uh either they're overstimulated by TV time, or they've got plenty of other things to watch also. And so I feel like it's hard to compare data. So who knows really how much people
Well,
are interested in.
a lot of streaming stuff is up though.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
trend, and HBO garners some respect in the matter here. And I don't know. I get what you're saying. Like, there's a lot to watch, and people are maybe watched out.
Mm.
But
Is the
yeah.
data that Alan shared, is that overall views, or is that like when it was dropped?
Yeah, that's a good question because
Mm.
they count initial airing. I think if you watch stuff on your DVR
Mhm.
Yep.
within a week,
Yep.
and then yeah, that sort of thing varies. All right. Well, thank you guys for breaking our time record for a podcast. I'm sure we've done it. Normally, I think our best has been 2 hours and 5 minutes about, and this has got to be 2:15 or something.
Yeah,
So,
215, 220.
you know,
Kept it
um,
going.
yeah, I mean, it's Andrea and I we take plenty of time in the news. It just, but
Mhm.
Mhm.
you can't rush some of it. So, Thank you for coming on. Thank you for dealing with the
Yeah.
tech issues. Thank you
Yeah.
for, starting to get a little philosophical. It's my favorite thing here. And yeah, I appreciate it. Maybe we can have you or one of you or whatever in combination back for we talked to future Tarantino episodes, so we'll get that stuff going in the works.
Sounds great,
So.
guys. This is fun.
Thanks for having us.
Nice.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Well, everyone, make sure you like and share and follow. This is on Twitch. You know that now if you're watching it. Thanks for anyone that joined us. This will be on YouTube. Go to Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review. That helps other people discover us. That's
Follow
about all
us
I
on
have.
social media.
Yeah, if you like Housewives, guess what? We've cut the Housewives segment, Real Housewives, out of the regular show, and it's its own thing now. So
right.
you go to that if you're into it, and you leave it if you don't. And gaming is a big thing right now with the transition of generations. We're going to be doing our midweek episode focusing on gaming. So tune in for that. And that's all I got.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Have a good night.
Right.